Spring break.
Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm Brian here with Andre and Randy. What's going on, guys?
Hey, good morning. We got some good weather over here. How about you?
It's like 36. It was like 36 degrees this morning over here in Texas, man. Really cold. But it'll be like 100 from here on out.
We had like a freight train run through last night, and there's all kinds of power outages and stuff. I don't even want to talk about it. I'm lucky I have power. I have my home and my office. Thank God. Like crazy. Like everyone else around here has no power. It's wild.
Dang.
So, all right, guys. Interesting show today. Three very different, but I think very interesting stories to dive into in the world of cybersecurity. If anything, should pique your interest in what the hell's going on out there, because, man, like it's not just AI that you got to worry about, and you got to worry about that for sure, but you got to worry about all the old stuff that was going on too, and then you got to worry about people on the inside, like the guy your company hired to negotiate your way out of a ransom attack, and he was the same guy who launched the attack in the first place. And it's not the first time we've heard a story like this. This is actually the third one in a very short period of time. So we're going to dive into that today. And, this stuff should make every business owner genuinely uncomfortable. I mentioned the negotiator secretly running the attacks that he was being paid to stop. We got an Iranian hacker group that we're going to talk about today that wiped 80,000 corporate devices in just 3 hours with no malware, nothing. So we're going to get into that. We're going to tell you how that happened, how easy that was, and that should open your eyes to how seriously companies take cybersecurity these days. And then a new survey showing that 77% of industrial companies, guys, got breached in the last 12 months. And we're hearing reports of a certain nation state hitting a nuclear facility in a European country, which is very much related to what's going on here. And a lot of these organizations didn't even know it for a very long time. So we're going to dive into all of that stuff today. And I want to jump into my story first, guys, and that's the ransomware negotiator story.
All right.
Let me
That's the wrong slide.
I know it is. I don't know why that one popped up.
We talked about that in the green room.
We did. So here's what happened, guys. A company called DigitalMint, they were based out of Chicago, and they specialized in ransomware incident response, right? And I got a lot of feelings about this, as I talked to you about in the green room, right? When you're, number one, when you're given an opportunity like ransomware incident response, and I know a lot of my friends who are watching this is really going to hit home to them and resonate with them. That is such you have to have such a high level of integrity when you're given that role and opportunity. The responsibility there is great, because you're dealing with a situation where people need you. They have no idea what's going on, and they're putting their 1,000% trust in what you're doing and your ability. And what I'm about to go down in this rabbit hole with you guys today with this story is just mind-blowing, that somebody is, quite frankly, this calculated and lacks empathy for the victims, that you would go to this level to do this. It's just wild. So, think about this. When you're a company, you get hit with ransomware, you don't know what to do. So you call a firm like DigitalMint, right? And this company, well regarded, maybe recommended by an insurer that you're insured by, they send somebody that they're vouching. This is our guy. He's the guy that knows how to talk to these Russian hackers, right? And they send them in to talk to these cyber criminals with the goal to try to reduce the ransom demand. And they also are the ones who practically guide, if they're not guiding the victim directly, the people under the ransomware attack, they're guiding the team that's guiding them, right? So they're working with, say, an attorney, a breach attorney, right? And they're talking to them, and they're guiding these companies through these incidents. And the entire business model is built on trust. Like our entire business model is built on trust. But when you're dealing with incident response, it's really built on trust. And it blows my mind that companies got this deep into this business.
Yep.
Look, there's not a lot of this out there. So if you're one of the lucky ones that have gotten incident response business, especially through, and I'm not talking about having guys show up and like unplug computers and stuff. I'm like talking about guys that actually do digital forensics, incident response, like high level stuff, not just unplugging the computers. There's two types of incident response things out there, right? I'm talking about the guys that go in, figure out what happened, and start the negotiations. And this week, federal prosecutors unsealed charges against Angelo Martino. And I know guys that know this guy, and they're pissed that this guy was running around doing this, because this guy was trusted. And he used that trust not only to get this kind of negotiation business, but then he used it to then take advantage of these organizations. So he was allegedly running these ransomware attacks himself. He used, just like we talk about on this show all the time, he decided to become an affiliate for ALPHV BlackCat ransomware group. He was able to facilitate 10 attacks that extracted $75 million in ransomware payments. 5 of the victims hired DigitalMint for help. So he was responsible. Let me get this straight. He did 10. So he attacked companies that he didn't even know would use his company. Only half of them did. So out of the half of them, after the 5 of the 10, it's known that he's gotten $75 million. What did he get from the other 5? So DigitalMint assigned Martino as their negotiator, and he was sitting across the table from his own victims, literally telling them, this is what we're negotiating, and he's the negotiator. How do you feel about that, guys?
I mean, it was he did have a good 75 million reasons to do it. I mentioned in the green room is very similar to, there was actually a movie on Netflix recently where they talked about some cops that their job was to do these like high drug busts, and here they are making $75,000, $100,000, and then they got so much money just that's not theirs but flowing through their hands. So obviously is greedy and obviously is wrong. You have, as we talk every week on these shows, you have businesses and there's people behind these businesses that are just trying to make a living. And how can you look someone in the eye? I think that's the biggest thing. You're looking someone in the eye saying, here I am to help you. And at the same time, you're screwing them on the other side. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that trust. So I'm glad he is, but I mean, 75 million in 2 years, right? Not bad.
It's good, I think, Brian, that it got caught, because I know the movie that you're talking about, Andre, and one of the gists of the movie was that these people that are doing these busts, there's a temptation every single time a bust happens. And so they had this real elaborate protocol that had to be in place to keep people from being tempted. This company didn't have, apparently, that elaborate protocol, or this guy just went rogue on his own. So it's good that he got caught, because that sends a signal out to someone else out there who's maybe thinking about doing something like this. I mean, that's the reality. Any one of these negotiators could do this. Any IT company could do this. And you don't want to You don't want people falling victim. Victim's the wrong word. You don't want people giving into that temptation to do that. So I'm glad that he got caught. And I'm glad that it's making the news and all of that. And it's really just awful. Bottom line, it's really, really just awful. Like you said, Andre, how can you sit across from somebody, and maybe it's all through chat, I don't know, but how can you sit across from somebody or on a phone call with somebody while you're there, you're the grifter, and you're the
More
one.
than likely, they flew him in, and he was in the office with those people, guaranteed.
Wow.
So, a couple things, right? I look at this whole situation, right? And you're looking at somebody who plays in the same realm as a lot of the people named in this article. And I know these people, right? And if I don't know them, I'm one or two contacts away from them. And over the years, I've always sat there and wondered how certain companies won certain business, right? Like, what are they doing that's so better, different than what my company's doing or what your guys' company's doing, that they are able to secure this type of business and other companies aren't? Because when I tell you this is rarefied air, I'm telling you it's rarefied air. Okay. Not a lot of people get to do this stuff. Right. So how do you get the trust level that high with people? It's a really interesting phenomenon. And I think a lot of people are asking that question in a lot of different places in today's world, right? With what's going on out there. Like, how did these people get this stuff, right? That's a big question. Because Randy, what you mentioned there was like, hey, there's got to be something, and there is something. The something is that you have what we've seen in IT and cybersecurity is going on. It's been going on for 20 years. It's still going on today. And this is just another sample of it, right? It's immature companies who get really big or get a lot of business really fast, and they can't handle it. This company, quite frankly, as a compliance expert and as an auditor, I can read an article and go, well, they didn't have a separation of duties policy, or they didn't have it well exercised enough to realize that they had a dude that had way too much information and way too much leeway with things once he got involved.
Right.
And that's where this company failed. I'm also going to go down another rabbit hole with you here.
All right.
Andre, I agree with you with what the hell is this guy thinking, and how do you look these people in the eyes? How do you look a nonprofit in the eyes that paid $27 million? A nonprofit.
Wow.
Their negotiator had given the attackers their internal communication to maximize what they could squeeze out.
Yeah.
So he wasn't trying to help the nonprofit. He was trying to help the criminals get more money from the nonprofit.
Agreed, man. And his justification probably was going to be, oh, it's insurance money anyways, you know?
Let's not just pick on Martino, right? Because at the end of the day, when you start looking at this whole entire thing, it really is the company.
Yeah.
Kevin Martin, who was already pleaded guilty in December, was a co-conspirator who was also a DigitalMint negotiator. And a guy from a completely separate firm called Sygnia, right? These are the three guys that were involved with this scheme to become BlackCat affiliates and then start finding people to attack companies. And once they had access, contact us, and then we'll get in contact with BlackCat and we'll hit them with ransomware.
If you're not smart enough, this is going to sound bad, but if you're not smart enough to pull off the attack yourself and have to use an affiliate to pull off the attack, you're going to get busted because you don't know how to fly under the radar. Am I right? Like,
Yeah.
This was going to happen for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And if anybody else out there is using,
BlackCat's never going to get caught, but these guys are.
Yes.
Yeah. So anybody in the middle, right? Any ransomware affiliate or any genius who thinks I'm going to be an initial access broker, like they don't care about you, right?
That's right.
Like, they have the protection of their country, from being prosecuted and arrested.
Right.
Most people that are doing this, like these guys, are in the United States. They're going down.
Yep.
Right. So, but I got to say, well, one thing, if you're a business owner, right, this screams like incident response plan. You need to have one. And who is my incident responder on retainer? Because you need to figure that out. Don't let somebody tell you who it should be. Figure out who you want to have come in and get your back when the shit hits the fan. Do you want that to be a stranger you don't know and end up like these companies who got nailed by these three guys who were completely unethical? And then you got to go back to the company, right? I mean, our number one core value at Exact IT is integrity. It always has been. And people are like, oh, you can't. I remember we used to go in these business coaching things, right? And they'd be like, oh, you gotta build your culture, write down your culture. And every IT company would be like integrity. And then those guys, every IT company says integrity. Pick something else. No, you need to have integrity, number one. And you need to state it. And that has to be. Like, if you're an IT company, your number one thing needs to be integrity or some word that is a synonym to it. Because you're being trusted with technology. AI companies, same way. Integrity. Do this shit the right way for humanity, people. Come on.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at this company before we end this segment, guys. This guy, CEO, right? We had no idea we terminated them. We cooperated with law enforcement. Okay, great. You had two people in your company running a ransomware scheme. Not one, two.
Mm-hmm.
And your CEO is out here saying, well, this all runs counter to our values. Well, guess what? You can have integrity at the top of your list, but if you don't live it as a CEO and your people don't live it and breathe it and don't sniff it out when it happens and bring it to somebody's attention, like in my company, if somebody acts out of line, I can guarantee you, if they're not a good employee, my good employees are sitting there going, we don't do that here.
Right.
That's not the Exact IT way. I hear that stuff in our office every day. I guarantee you that doesn't go on at DigitalMint. So at the end of the day, if you're a CEO of a company, this goes with anything. Don't pass the buck. At some point, it's your fault. Own it. Total responsibility. We didn't know stops being an acceptable defense when you have multiple people. I'm always going to say this. When your people screw up, you can't be like, as the person who hired them, you can't be like, well, we had nothing to do with that. You hired them, then you take responsibility. You assign victims to them, you take responsibility. That's on you. So that's it. I'm done. That's my rant. Off my soapbox. This is the most horrible thing I've ever read in our time being cybersecurity people. Like this makes my stomach turn that this went on, and it annoys me. So I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad we brought it to light. But at the end of the day, IT companies, like, you can't do this stuff, and if you do, you need to pay the price.
Well, I think what the CEO put that statement out because now he's like, holy crap, I'm going to have to pay the $75 million back, to all these places. So I'm sure he's worried about that as well.
Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Randy, you good?
I'm good. I just had to cough.
All right, man. Well, we're rolling into your story now, my friend. So this was an interesting one because if you didn't cover this one, I was going to take it. But
yeah, the second I saw it, I'm like, I got to get it out there before Brian takes it.
But it's fascinating and genuinely alarming in every way, right? I'm just going to start off the segment by saying Stryker is one of the biggest medical device companies on the planet. I didn't ever even heard of them until this event, and I looked them up, and I was like, oh my God. Like, they've been around forever. You know, the fact that they came up with this name in like 1940 something was like, I was like, oh wow. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, everything about this story was cool, other than the fact that Randy, their cybersecurity is probably not so great, right?
Yeah. So basically what happened here, short story long at the beginning, the too lazy didn't read, bad guys got in to their 365 of Stryker and were able, in 3 hours, were able to wipe 80,000 devices remotely. So there's a lot more behind that.
Between 5 and 8 in the morning too.
Yep. After hours. I'm going to talk about that in a second here, because that matters. But this is a group called Handala, which is, you know, they appear to be a hacktivist group. Handala was a victim in one of the battles in or whatever over in Palestine. So, you know, that's kind of their name. But short story long, most likely it's a front for the Iranian security and intelligence, basically the Iranian version of the CIA. And as we all know, war is going on over there. And this is this is a matter of them basically retaliating, is what it appears like. And if you go all the way back when the Ukraine war started, we had a whole show and we talked about this. This is a reality of the world we live in. When there are kinetic battles going on, that means there's actual planes and trucks and tanks and all that jazz and bombs and this and that. When there's a kinetic war going on, there's going to be a cyber war that goes alongside of it at the same time. And that's appears to be what happened here. So basically what happened was, I'm going to kind of say a couple things. Maybe it sounds easy. And I know people are saying no malware needed, but they were able to get into the 365, and then they created their own global admin. And I know, Brian, I know your brain's going crazy right now because there's a lot between the lines here. They got in, they created their own global admin, and then that's when they went to town just doing destruction. That's really all this is. This is just a shell that got lobbed back this way, and this is where it blew up. So I got to ask some questions about that, though, because the official press release is no evidence of malware. I literally read that, and I was like, whoa. Hold up here a second, okay? Because that to me, just that one statement says to me that there's a lot more going on here between the lines, right? Because how did they get a global admin? Was it because that they had weak MFA? Well, no evidence of malware is literally a damning statement then, because if they were able just to get a username and password off the internet and log in as a global admin with no MFA or super weak MFA, or what we call MFA fatigue, where they just keep pushing the button and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, which, literally, it probably started around then, 4 o'clock in the morning, and the global administrator's laid in bed. He's like, shut up, and he hits okay and approves it. Could have been that, right? Well, that's not good.
Definitely was not. Definitely was. I already know for a fact that was not the case.
Right. And so if that's not the case, then it's probably a case of what's called a session token, which means you're logged in over here. It creates a little cookie. You steal the cookie. You use that cookie, which has all basically it says I'm logged in. It's like your front door pass. And then you use that to create another global admin. Well, what did I say going into, like, what was it, 2024 or 2025, that we got to get rid of these session tokens that can just go to any device on any IP address anywhere in the world. So maybe it was that. Okay, so if it was that means they had to get on that device, or that device had to be somewhere that was super duper exposed. where they were able to get it over the internet or something like that. So I don't know. What I'm thinking is it was a phishing attack and they were able somehow to get it then, which is a little bit more than just no evidence of malware. And then a couple other things I want to say, and then I'll turn it over to y'all. And I have a couple questions to think about here. So first off, new global admin created. Why did all the alerts in the world not go off when that happened? When a session token went from, Lawrenceville, Georgia or whatever, and all of a sudden it's popping up in New Jersey 2 seconds later, or overseas 2 seconds later, why was that account not immediately shut down? Why didn't alerts go off like crazy? After hours, people might say, well, it's after hours, all the staff was sleeping. That kind of stuff should be automated. That should be automated. It shouldn't matter. You ought to have a human that's looking over it. If you need to get a third-party service, go for it. But you ought to have a human looking over it 24/7. Should have blown what I call blown all kinds of gaskets. Man, all kinds of alerts should have gone off when this happened. And you're like, well, it all happened in 3 hours. Okay, let's say no alerts went off when the session token jumped from Georgia to Spain. Let's say no alerts went off when a brand new global admin was created. Well, alerts should have gone off when devices started wiping. No IT company in the world wipes 80,000 devices all at once. That should have been flagged as an anomaly or something like that. And then, I'm wondering also, could they maybe have got in through some kind of service account that had an extra amount of privileges? First off, I know of rogue apps that are out there that if you allow them onto your system, then the bad guys can basically shoehorn themselves into creating global admins. Maybe that happened, but when it showed up, it should have blown a bunch of alerts. And then I guess my questions are these. So how many global admins do you have right now in your system? Are your global admins protected with phishing resistant MFA, which means tied to the device it's on, tied to biometrics, can't be taken overseas or whatever, or to another state or city? Can anybody create a new global admin in your device and it not blow a bunch of gaskets? And are you monitoring for those new global admins? Those are just some of the questions that I thought of, and I want to hear what you guys think about this.
Yeah, I mean, this is just so much, this hacktivism is just so much more dangerous because, it's one thing if they've locked 200,000 of your computers and you pay a few $1,000,000 to, the same guy negotiating with you, as we talked about in the last article. But when you're talking about now 200,000 computers worldwide, and now you need to have boots on the ground to, in a sense, reinstall the operating system, I think that's even more painful. And, again, I know you said it's regarding what's happening in the world. So if your company is dealing with any type of things happening on that region, this is just another reason why you need to make sure that you're everything that Randy said. I mean, we ourselves have, like you said, Randy, these simple tools. Well, first of all, if a global admin is created, we get an alert. And because if that global admin tries to log in outside of certain IP addresses, it automatically gets blocked. So, like layers and layers of security. So this is just crazy that it's happened. But, and again, what's even crazier is that it's not something that this company can now just pay for the problem to go away. They now have to just redo 200,000 computers. That's going to take almost a year, I would think, to get back up and running.
It's going to take a long time, no doubt. So super interesting conversation and topic. I'm just going to kind of leave it because you guys kind of hit it all, but I'm going to leave it with one simple piece of advice for business owner. If you want to find out if this could happen to you, just go to your IT guy or MSP, whoever, and ask them this simple question. Do you have the ability to wipe our devices? If the answer is yes, then so do the cyber criminals.
And to kind of respond to that, so the answer is yes, in that tools are available and they're a part of, in this case, 365. are available to do that. And then you got to ask yourself, it's like having a circular saw. Can a circular saw cut your fingers off? It can. If you're not doing it right, it can also cut a board in half, which is what you wanted in the first place. So, you've got a very strong tool. Sometimes you have to remote wipe these devices. The user can't respond, user can't log in or whatever. That's the very sharp tool. But do you have guards in place to keep from cutting all your fingers off? And in this particular case, apparently they did not. Or who knows? It's crazy. I understand with an Intune tenant that's this large comes a lot of complexity, right? But still, basic security rules still apply, right?
Our little 10-person companies, we're doing this stuff. Like, so how in the hell does a company with all of these devices don't have that in place? It just doesn't make sense, man.
No, it does not at all. So, it just goes to show you, like, again, I'm going to say this till the cows come home. Just like in professional sports, right? Not every team has a roster of superstars, right? You agree, guys? Like, not every team has a roster of superstars, right? Maybe USA Hockey, but that's about it. At the end of the day, normal sports teams have a couple superstars and everybody else is right around the same, right? And that makes up a team, right? It's no different in this world, right? There's good IT people and there's really good IT people, right? And maybe your guy's good enough to where you feel comfortable with him, but he's not good enough to get you through an event like this or protect you from an event like this. And I think that's part of the problem and part of the reason we live in this world is because people get comfortable with somebody, people build a relationship, and they think, like, that's my guy. I've said this before on the show, right? We get comfortable with the relationship, and we don't ever question it or look outside of it or evaluate it or whatever. We just kind of go with the flow. Yeah, it's human nature, right? Unless we hold ourselves to a higher standard and we have these frameworks in place where we're forced to check this stuff, we're just going to let the days go by and go about our day and think that our guy has us covered and he's got our back until an event like this happens. And that's how it plays out. So you got to be aware of this stuff. All right, here we go. Andre, ready?
I'm ready.
I like this, man. So, we've been talking about specific incidents here, and a betrayal and attack, and now we got this final story here for the show we're going to wrap up with. And Andre, I got to tell you, I think this might be actually the most disturbing one we cover, even though we just discovered two other, because this is a story about what could happen, right? And what could happen feels real when you're about to tell us the details. So why don't you start telling us what the concern is here and why you wanted to bring this to the show today?
Yeah, and next slide, please.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you. All right. So first of all, we have a term that we don't often say in the podcast, but it's called OT, which is operational technology. And what this article is talking about is a recent survey where they're talking with more industrial type of companies, specifically Siemens. So our company, for example, we deal with a lot of condominiums, and we deal a lot with like chiller systems, HVAC systems, what they call BMS systems and building management systems and so forth like that. And what we saw in the last 10 years is that long time ago, this big chiller system in a building that's handling, 2 towers, cooling system and everything like that. If there was ever an issue with the AC, for example, and it's a Saturday night, the building engineer would get a phone call and he would literally have to drive to the location, reset the thermostat, do the controls and so forth like that. And now as technology has improved, these companies, these HVAC companies, what they've done is they said, oh, okay, let's add a network card to these systems, plug it into, the internet. And now the building engineer, if it's Saturday night, he doesn't have to drive all the way to the building to do the controls. He can just control it from the internet. Just do a little port forwarding or open up a port or whatever the case is. And let's just go ahead and keep that same admin password that he always uses. Not a big deal. So during the survey, we are seeing that 77% of organizations have had some type of breach in the last 12 months regarding OT. And unfortunately, 41% of these attacks are believed to go undetected. And what happens there is you have machines stop working, the building stops functioning. I remember there was a local company, for example, where when their system got compromised, the AC was just set. If it was at 75, for example, even if they were physically in front of the machine, they couldn't because the whole system was compromised. And once they get in, like how we saw with Target, right, many years ago, once you can get into that weakest point, then you can then go laterally across the network. So this is just another point of entry. We always look for hackers look for the weakest point to get into a system. And unfortunately, this industry is more of, let's just put the network card in, but then it hasn't caught up to the security. And now that's causing a big vulnerability in these businesses that uses these products.
Yeah, and then this is an industry that claims that security is at the top of board agendas, according to a recent survey. Yet 77% still got breached. Mm-hmm. So, folks, CEOs in this industry, there's a gap between what's being said in the boardroom and what's actually happening and what's getting funded, implemented, and maintained at what Andre said, the operational level. So, I don't know if there's CIOs and CISOs struggling to get what they need, or it's a situation where they don't know what they need. So they don't know what to ask for.
Yeah.
And you got to figure that out, because I've seen both. I've seen it where I've walked into situations in a hack company and you're talking to the CISO and you're like, hey, you got hacked this way because, and we've been trying to get that in place, right? And they won't give us the funding. They won't give us enough people to run it, right? That's a conversation that happens all the time. The other conversation that happens all the time is you walk in and you ask questions to the CIO or CISO, and you can just tell that they're clueless. They're completely unaware that thing existed and could be a vector for an attack.
Right.
And that happens too, right? And you have to figure out what you have, which is why you need to have your team audited, whether it's inside or outside. It's very important. Not a lot of people want to do it because they feel like, it's a violation of that relationship, that trust that's supposed to be there. It's not. You're just reinforcing what you think you should do, and you're doing the right thing for all the other employees in your organization.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not, even if it's a smaller organization, we're just talking about the cameras, the building cameras, the door access systems. Now you can unlock the door, or see who's in front of your office. If your warehouse systems, medical devices, so it's all of these devices that have modernized to be on the internet, but then the manufacturers also haven't done. Like we did an article the other day where they stopped doing updates, right? Remember that one where these medical devices stopped doing updates, but they were working perfectly fine, and then that was another way for bad guys to get in.
And I would also say, I know personally of a ton of IT professionals out there who feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. And from what I've learned talking to them, the ones that are able to get the money put towards these kind of things, they have to learn how to speak the lingo of the CFO, because this becomes an organization, like this could be an organization ender. This could be a
risk conversation.
Yes, it is a risk conversation. And then, we see a lot of private equity firms come in here in a lot of these situations, and I'm not saying all, but we see a lot of times it's more of extracting value than putting money back in. But even in that situation, this is still a conversation. Even in the situation of private equity, this is still a conversation about risk, about a business ending risk that needs to happen. And I would say if you're an IT director over at one of these companies, go to your ChatGPT and say, hey, help me learn the lingo of my CFO. Help me learn, what pushes their buttons. How do I push the buttons in light of private equity? And then go out and have a dang beer and build a relationship. I just hear that over and over when I'm talking to people that are IT in these companies.
I'll give you the other side of that, right? Because obviously we talk to like I mentioned, you can talk to a CISO in an incident and be like, what happened here? And they can tell you like, hey, I just didn't know, right? Or I tried, but they didn't give me the funding, right? So if it's that case, I'm going to say, I don't know, more than 60% of the time, somewhere between 60 and 80% of the time, 80 might be a little high. There's a discourse, because when you talk to the CFO or the CEO and you're like, hey, talk to Joe. Joe said he recommended this thing and you guys didn't want to do it. And I'm going to tell you, if you had that thing in place, you wouldn't be sitting in the position you're in today. And a lot of times I'll hear back things like, oh, well, they didn't understand it was a risk conversation. It was like the guy was just asking for more software, more tools. It was another expense. And that's where the disconnect is, right? And that's what Randy's asking you, to kind of close that gap and understand that it's not a technical conversation. And it's really hard for technicians to get around that and understand that, hey, the tool can do this and it can do that. It can block that and it can respond to this automatically. No, that's not the conversation. The conversation is, when shit goes down, we're only going to be down for 2 days and we'll be back up and running. And we won't have to pay the ransom. But we need to have these 3 or 4 things in place. Otherwise, we're never going to be there.
Yep.
You want to drive them to that place where they feel safety. Not, hey, it's going to block this or stop that, or that's just, okay, great. Why do we need to worry about that? Well, the worry is the business is going to get shut down.
Awesome.
Any thoughts?
I don't think people take pride in their work anymore, man. They just want to collect that check. Like for me, I'm thinking, I guess, different as a business owner. If my client gets ransomware and I know I could have done more,
yep,
that's my name. That's Arc Solvers' name. Like we're going to be like, the laughing stock of South Florida. That's the last thing I want, is an article about this company got hacked and this MSP or whatever lawsuit happens and things like that. But I think nowadays it's just like how we talk in the green room, just go to the next buck, whatever. I'll just, and I mean, even if you are the IT director and your company gets hacked and now you go, you move on from that company, everybody's going to be like, why should we hire you? So I don't get it, man.
Yep. 100%. Good points. All right, guys. Great stories. Great conversation this week. I think one thread for me goes through all of them, and that the tools, the people, and the platforms that you're trusting to protect you are the exact things being turned against you, right? We use that term all the time on the show, living off the land. Like, that's what these guys are doing now, to the T, right? They're getting in there, they're figuring out what you already have, and they're turning those tools against you before they install anything else, right? You got a ransomware negotiator as an attacker. You got a device management platform that was the weapon. Your vendor's remote access credentials were the front door. These aren't technology problems, folks, and these things aren't going to get solved with another tool. It's trust, it's accountability around the people and the processes that are running your security. So it's time to start asking the harder questions, because all these events that we're seeing require that. You got to ask questions of your vendors, of your IT team, of your incident response firm. And honestly, of your own leadership. The threats are sophisticated, and with AI, they're only going to get worse. The attacks are sophisticated. With AI, they're only going to get worse. Guys, the other day, Firefox has been around for how long?
The 90s.
Humans have been looking for vulnerabilities in Firefox for how long? Well, they just ran code against it the other day, and it found 500 in one pass.
Wow.
And 0 days are things that weren't discovered by humans before that.
And whose data just ran it? Firefox hopefully ran it, or
Firefox worked with Claude to do this.
Oh, wow. Okay, good.
500 vulnerabilities inside of Firefox.
Gosh.
Yeah. So your defenses you have to have this up to snuff. And Randy and Andre and I tell you guys on this podcast every single week, it's not complicated, it's not expensive, but you need to be deliberate and you need to ask the questions that we're telling you to ask. So that's Security Squawk for this week. If the conversation got you thinking, and it should have, share us with your friends and family. Rate us on your podcasting platforms. Do whatever you can to get the word out and help us spread the word on this show. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you can. Share us on the social media. And if you got value from the show, I ask you to take 60 seconds, leave a comment, and leave a review. Helps other business owners find this information. That's what you're doing for other people, not us. And remember, you can always support Andre, Randy, and I. You can buy us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/Security Squawk. We appreciate the support. We'll see you next week. Stay safe out there. I'll see you next week from a new location. So,
all right.
Be safe out there. Take care, everyone.